All right, so you think your English grammar is pretty solid, right? Well, we put together a test that might just make you think twice. Let's see how you do. We're about to dive into some of the trickiest, most confusing corners of the English language. So, the real question is, how good is your grammar? Really? Feeling confident? And hey, a little warning to the native speakers out there, don't get too comfortable. A couple of these are so specific, they catch pretty much everyone by surprise. Ready to jump in? Okay, to get us started, let's talk about how context is everything. Grammar rules aren't always set in stone. In fact, they can get pretty flexible depending on if you're writing a formal essay or just texting a friend.
All right, first question for you. Take a look at this sentence. There's a word missing. Pardon Molly to resign. Who'd replace her? What word do you think fits in that blank? Take a second.
And the answer is were. Were Molly to resign? I know, it sounds a little strange, doesn't it? But there's a really interesting reason why this is totally correct. This little trick is called an inverted conditional. Basically, it's a super formal, kind of fancy way of saying if Molly were to resign. You just drop the word if and flip the sentence structure around to sound more sophisticated. You'll see this in formal writing, but you're probably not going to hear someone say it out loud. Okay, sticking with that idea of formal versus casual English, let's check out our next puzzle. We've got two sentences here that mean the exact same thing, but which one is technically correct? Number one or number two? And the answer is a bit of a trick question. Both are actually correct, but this is a perfect example of how our language is always changing. One of these is the old school by-the-book version, while the other is what you'll hear pretty much everywhere today. So here's the breakdown. To whom is the gold standard if you're being super formal? The old rule says the preposition, which is to here, has to be paired with whom. But let's be honest, you're way more likely to hear someone say, "Who does this jacket belong to?" This just goes to show you that how people actually speak every day can end up changing the rules. Okay, next up, we are tackling a mistake that is incredibly common. So common, you've probably heard it in a professional meeting like this week. It is all about the word myself. Think about this sentence. Tim or myself will lead the meeting today. It sounds pretty professional, right? A lot of people use myself because they think it sounds more formal or more polite. But from a pure grammar standpoint, it's actually wrong. So, can you spot the error? What is actually wrong with that sentence? I'll give you a second to think it over. The mistake is using myself when it should just be I. And the rule is actually pretty simple. Myself is a reflexive pronoun, which means you only use it when the action is reflecting back on the subject. Think of it like this. I taught myself to code, or I saw myself in the reflection. In our sentence, you are the subject doing the action, so you just need the subject pronoun. Tim and I will lead. All right, for this next section, we're going to hop across the Atlantic. Because sometimes the correct answer really depends on whether you're standing in London or Los Angeles. Let's look at the classic showdown, British versus American English. So what do you think? When you're talking about a group, like a crowd or a team, do you treat it as one single thing, the crowd is, or as a bunch of individuals, the crowd are? Which one sounds right to you? Well, surprise! The answer depends on which side of the pond you're on. In British English, you can actually use either one. You could say the team is winning if you're thinking of the team as a single unit, or the team are winning if you're thinking about the individual players. But in American English, it's much simpler. The group is almost always treated as a single thing, so the crowd is getting restless. And now for what might be the most heated debate in all of punctuation. The Oxford comma. You know that last little comma in a list before the word and? So take a look. Which one of these is punctuated correctly? The one with the comma or the one without? And once again, it's a tale of two Englishes. American English generally uses that final comma, the Oxford comma, to avoid any possible confusion. British English, on the other hand, tends to leave it out in simple lists. Honestly, there's no single right answer here. The most important rule is just to pick a style and be consistent with it. So, after all these tricky questions and bend rules, what's the big picture here? What does this all really tell us about language? Well, the biggest lesson is that grammar isn't some fixed thing set in stone. It's alive, and it's always changing. So let's recap what we've learned. We've seen that context and geography can completely flip the rules. A formal report is going to sound different than a text message, and London has different habits than New York. But the biggest lesson of all is that language isn't decided by a committee in a room somewhere. It's shaped by the billions of conversations we have every day. What's considered a mistake today could very easily become the standard tomorrow. Which brings us to a final, really fascinating question for you to think about. Since language is constantly being shaped by us, the people who actually use it, what common grammar mistake that you hear all the time do you think will eventually become an accepted grammar rule in the future?